Hi and welcome back to my channel. I am Koala and this is my little nook in this end of the universe that we call YouTube. And I am a shamanic practitioner mainly within Nordic shamanism, but I'm also initiated into Nustakarpa and the Munaki rites. So in this series I talk about mental health from a shamanic perspective. And in the first video, maybe that way, in the first video I shared a little bit about what that means, what my shamanic perspective is. And I want to add that this is my shamanic perspective. This is a perspective that might not align with other shamanic perspectives from other shamanic practitioners all over the globe. And take that into consideration when you watch these videos. And I would also like to add that there's no way for me to have room for everything that this topic encompasses in these 4 videos that I share with you here on YouTube, not even with the 2 videos that I also share on Patreon, exclusive to Patreon, because there's so many things to talk about. But I want to make this series to give a little bit of my perspective on it and hopefully help someone and inspire someone along the way. So in my first video I talked a little bit about the shamanic perspective and kind of where I'm coming from and the perspective I'm coming from and why. Because there are certain things that I don't discuss in these videos, and mainly because that's not the perspective I want to give, but also because there's no room. If I were to talk about all of those things, then it would take up so much time and space. With that said, I might get back into those things later on, maybe next year or something. But for now, this is what we are dealing with. So in my last video, the second video in this series, I talked about traumas of this life and how those can affect our health and our mental health in this life. In this video, I'm going to talk about generational trauma, generational curses. And in the next video, the last video in this series, I'm going to talk about past lives and how those might affect our health and mental health in this life. So towards the end of the last video, I talked a little bit about how everything that we experience and everything that every situation that we are in, every trauma that we go through affects us. And then I said that we are also affected by inherited traits and inherited strengths and weaknesses. So that's where I want to start this video. So I want to start by saying that strength and weaknesses is a matter of perception. So we might be born with a trait that for all intents and purposes in this life feels like or is viewed as a weakness in some way. But if we are in the right circumstance, in the right situation, it might be a strength instead. And to give an example, I'm just gonna share a short story about my niece. So when I was 12 years old, that's the first time that I had an injury to my knees, or I was in a situation where one of my knees were injured. So what happened was that my knee had a patella luxation. I don't know if that's the word in English actually. I might have to look that up and put the right one here somewhere if that is wrong. But basically it's when the kneecap moves around a little bit when pressure is when it's pressured in any direction. So the result of that is that the tendons in the knee are lengthened. So my knee ended up feeling like spaghetti. I couldn't really walk with it because it just, fell from underneath me. So when I went to the doctor with that when I was 12, someone said that there was a genetic factor to it because I wasn't the first one in the family to have bad knees. And all through my childhood and even into my adulthood, this felt like and was viewed as a weakness. I had a weakness to my knees. I had a predisposition to have this happen. So I had to be careful, etc., etc. But it was also the fact that every time it happened at least 3 times so severely that I had to go through physiotherapy to strengthen the tendons again around the knee and to make it right again, make it better again. So all through my childhood, my teens, early adulthood, this was viewed as a weakness, and an inherited weakness at that. So when I became an adult and I started to want to heal different aspects through shamanic healing, among other things, I stumbled into the matter of my knees from a completely different direction. And I ended up actually accepting that they are what they are, and not just that, I ended up being extremely grateful for my knees and for this supposed weakness, because what I realized was that it was actually a strength. And that might sound very weird, but hear me out. So I had friends growing up that had been through different physical traumas akin to mine, when my knee just, when this happened to my knee. So for my friends that went through similar experiences, their tendons broke. They had to go through surgery. The rehabilitation for that was tremendously longer than it was for me when mine were stretched. So I realized that this is a strength because my knees are flexible instead of break, because none of my knees have to this day, knock on wood, broke. They've never broke, so nothing has been broken. So I ended up thanking my knees for being so flexible, for helping me stay whole when other people, in situations where other people broke physically. So in my adulthood, I could, reconcile with my knees and be like, thank you. And whoever made this happen for me from generations past, thank you. This has helped me so much. When other people have broke, I have stayed whole. So I really thank my knees a lot for being what they are, and being how they are, being a part of me. So that's what I mean a little bit about it's the view you have on it, and that is how I go into each and every situation. That is when someone says, well, I have a weakness to do this, I have a trait that makes me predisposed to this or this, and I always go in with a little bit of skepticism and a little bit of love to that situation, and I wait for the full story and then see where we can go from there. So with that out of the way, generational trauma, what is that? So in the last video I talked about how traumas can affect ourselves in this life, and when it comes to generations that have come before us, there are different layers to it and different perspectives. So we can look at it from a wider perspective and a bigger perspective with the generations that have gone through traumatic events. Because the more people behind you that's been through something, the bigger the risk or the chance that it is inherited by you in some way or another. So if you have ancestors that have been through war, that can affect the entire line in different ways. One way could be that has to do with scarcity and scarcity thinking. That one generation some while back had to really, count every penny, count every crown, as we would in Sweden, and searched, for food, and maybe have to really save food and ration food and that sort of thing. And that takes a toll not only on that generation and the people living that during that time. That kind of thinking follows you through generations, and it follows in two different ways, but also interconnected ways. One is that the people that is directly affected by the scarcity that is real, their genetic codes, their genetic codes are changed, and it's embedded in their cellular memories, and that is then physically inherited by their children and children's children going forward until someone breaks the cycle. And then there's also the matter of how that affects the people and how they treat other people because of what they have been through. So it both affects the genes and the cellular memories of the people, but it also affects the mind, and that is carried, you know, from generation to generation with how people relate to each other and what kids are taught. And someone might think that they weren't taught scarcity thinking, but if it was present in the parent's life or the grandparent's life, then the thinking can be there even though it's not directly taught. It's just something that always is. So there's an example I can make, and maybe this is very Swedish to know this, but I watched a sketch recently by a person living in Sweden, and he made the comparison between different cultures, because Sweden is a multicultural society, and I grew up having friends from different cultures and different backgrounds, right? And this is so, what I'm going to tell you is so true. I can really attest to that this, I've experienced this. So, in the first part of the sketch, this person played a mother from a culture where they are very generous with food. So, in the sketch, the son in the family is going to bring home 2 friends to eat dinner with the family, and the mother is standing in the kitchen cooking a lot. Like, there's potatoes and rice and bread and different kinds of stews and a salad and a dessert and everything. It's like a buffet of food. And the son that is a part of the Swedish society more than the mother, because in this sketch she's like it's evident that she wasn't brought up in Sweden. So, but the son is, and he comes in when his mother is cooking all this food, and he's like, "Well, I'm only bringing home 2 friends. This is too much." It's almost like this teenager in the sketch is ashamed of his mother going so overboard with all of this, that it's gonna be weird for his Swedish friends that this is so that there's gonna be so much food on the table. And the mother in the kitchen says, "This isn't much. I've just been cooking since I got up this morning, and that's okay. It's not much, and they can take food home if there's leftovers. It's fine." And the son is like, "Okay." And then the sketch continues with another perspective, and that is a Swedish parent. And this was so true for me going into different homes as a child. So in the sketch there's a Swedish mom, right? And then her son is gonna bring home 2 friends. And the mom is in the kitchen trying to plan dinner and calls for the son, and the son is like, "Yeah, what's up?" And the mom is like, "Was it only Olle and Lasse that's coming for dinner, right?" "Yes, yeah, only Olle and Lasse." Okay, so, and then she holds up a pack of fish sticks. And it could also be like meatballs or anything, sausages, it could be anything, but she's holding up fish sticks, right? And she's like, "Okay, so if every person has 1, 2, 3, do you think they want 3 or 4? And he's like, "I don't know, I want 4. And she's like, "Okay, then everyone gets 4. So we have those for you, and those for Lasse, and those for Olle, and those for me, and those for Dad. Should I make one extra in case someone's more hungry? No, that won't be fair. No, I'm just gonna do these 4. Great. And then she puts them in the oven or whatever, and the son is like, okay, is that what I came in for? You could have just counted that yourself. Something like that. And the funny thing is that this is so accurate. This was very accurate for me growing up. That and this is what it looked like. And you might think, well, Sweden hasn't been to war or hasn't been through anything that like hardship in a few hundred years. But we have. You might forget that there are a lot of people in the US, for example, that has Swedish and Nordic ancestors, Scandinavian ancestors, because there was a time in our history when there weren't any food and everyone was very poor for several reasons. So and it was so bad that people actually fled the country for a better life in America. So this is something that has been, brought into the Swedish thinking from that generation, from all of those people living during that time. And we have had other times after that, the depression in the 30s, and then other things happening along the way. So we haven't really shed the scarcity thinking. And that's one way of carrying it with you and not even realizing the differences, and not even, because in Sweden it's normal. It's normal to be like, okay, so how many is coming for dinner? Then I will make, how many burgers do you think everyone wants? And then to really calculate it and really buy as many as they want to, because we want to make sure that we have enough, but not too much, because we can't afford to throw it away. And this thing of not throwing things away is really prominent in the Swedish thinking. And I've worked in preschools where we teach children nowadays to not take more on the plate than we can eat, because you don't throw away food. And there's been so many different sayings around this to help instill this in children. Things that aren't true. Like, think of the children in Africa. Like, how is me eating an extra meatball gonna help a child in Africa? That's just silly. So my point is that this is one way that scarcity thinking has affected one culture, right? And I am not a part of the culture that is very generous with their food and makes a lot of it and just is like, oh, it's this, no worry. So I don't really know the thinking behind that. But I don't doubt that there's thinking behind that as well. But and there might be traumas behind that as well. That instead of not throwing away food, let's make as much as we can while we can. We have all of this, let's make a party of it. Let's party while we can, or whatever. I'm not sure where it comes from, but it's an interesting and very wonderful way to see the magnificent difference between different cultures. And these differences are a product of what generations before us went through and how that thinking affects us today. And within that affects our mental health and different types of things. It can also affect our physical health. The scarcity in past generations can affect our metabolism. It can affect a lot of things for us in the current generation. Another thing that can happen to an entire generation of people within a specific culture that can affect future generations is to have to run for your life, to have to hide, to have to leave your country behind, to flee. Because that can give an entire generation one level or another of PTSD, of post-traumatic stress disorder, that they carry with them. And the mentality of always being on the run and maybe never settling, or always longing for what was, and that sort of thing. All of these things can affect future generations. So it affects directly the generation that is running, right, that is fleeing, and their children, but also when they have settled, depending on if they actually feel like they can, it affects the children and coming generations. Some, I know, they leave the entire culture behind, they never look back, they fully integrate into the new society with all of that, and makes the children and future generation feel a bit rootless because they know nothing about where they came from. But it can also be that they are never fully integrated, and it tries to live like in a mini society, and they because they want to go back. So the generation that had to flee might always want to go back, but isn't able to go back. But they raise the children to want to go back, that they don't belong, and it's that sense of not belonging that comes from once we fled. And also every other aspect of PTSD, the hypervigilance, the nightmares, the flashbacks, and all of that can actually be embedded in the genetics, in the cellular memories, but also become more than just tales told by the elderly. It becomes like ingrained in your mentality in different ways. So that's one way where generational trauma can affect us, when something happens to an entire generation. Then we have the fact that if one thing happens to one person far back, that completely changes their life, completely changes their view of life and how they treat themselves and people around them, because something has affected them so tremendously and so fundamentally. That can also be embedded into the DNA, into the cellular memories, but also affect how that person treats the coming generations. So that can be something that we carry with us. So maybe your cousins don't have a problem with something on that side or on that side, but maybe your siblings have, because they had the same parent as you, and it's something that happens like in a straight line from maybe it was your grandfather or grandfather's father or something like that. And it can be everything from being different and having to hide yourself and never walking your true path of life, and therefore always being closed and mysterious and not wanting to talk about things that have happened and that sort of thing, and really carry that with you. So maybe everyone else in the family is so open and they are so friendly, and then there's one person that had to close themselves and then carry that mindset with them into parenthood, and then it was given to the next generation and the next generation after that, and that made you so closed up, and you have no idea why can't I connect with people when everyone else is so friendly. And this can affect different people in a family differently. So you might be closed up and closed down, but maybe your sibling is the most extroverted person you've ever met, because we are affected differently. So this also is a really great segue into generational curses, actually. But I'm gonna try and close the first topic first, and that is just as something terrible can happen to a person, and that can be inherited in both the mental aspect and the physical aspect of that, from that person to the next generation and the next after that. Just as something bad can have that effect, something good can as well. And that is the way to really change this and to really heal this, is to be the cycle breaker. To be the one that, no matter if it's one person that has been affected or a generation, you can be the one to say, well, okay, that I see that happened back then. I see and I understand that this is how you had to deal with all of this. But I'm here and I don't need that anymore. I don't need the scarcity thinking because I have everything I need. I don't need to count every fish stick. I'm here in this period of time, and me as a person, I understand why generations before me had to act that way. I understand why they had to flee. I don't have to flee. I can settle. I can settle here. And see that and respect generations that have come before you and thank them for what they did and how they managed to find a way to live so that you can live. But then let it go. And be the cycle breaker and actively change your mindset and work on that. So when it comes to generational curses, I said it was a great segue into generational curses. So let's go back to that person that had something horrible happen to them, that completely changed their view of life and how they handled life. Let's say that what happened to them was that they lost everyone in their family. They saw horrible things that haunted them, it haunted them every night and every day, and they had no escape until one day someone said, "Here is some moonshine. That will take the edge off. It will help you sleep." And the person tried that, and they were like, "Yeah, wow, this is wonderful. I don't have to think about anything. I can just be in this state of whatever it feels like, And they really needed that at that time. They needed an escape. They needed something to make them want to continue on. And they found alcohol, or maybe they found a drug, or they found some way of coping, a coping mechanism. So in this example that I'm talking about, let's say it was alcohol or drugs. Something was shown to them. Let's say moonshine. Let's say really heavy spirits. And they're like, yeah, this is what I need. Thank you. And they go through the entire life needing that as a crutch. And in that time that they were in, maybe they weren't any psychotherapists or psychologists, or there were no help to be found unless you wanted to be maybe in an insane asylum, going through electrical shock therapy or whatever. Maybe it was even before that, before that era. And the only thing they had was this crutch. They had no way of healing what they went through. But they survived. They married, had kids, and then depending on how this was viewed upon and how the person managed life with this, maybe they managed really well. Maybe it was a good crutch at the time. And maybe the other person in the household, the other parent, had the same crutch, teaching the children that this is a great crutch. This is a wonderful crutch. We can have this in our... This is something that is acceptable to help us through the day and life. And it's also something that, raises the spirits, and we can party with it, we can celebrate with it. It's something that is joyful and wonderful. It has so many different aspects, and it's this medicine. Because alcohol has been used as a medicine back in the day. And so that means that this person at some point welcomed this into their heart, into their body, into their mind. And I often on this channel, or I sometimes at least, talk about how I try to live ceremoniously, how I welcome everything I eat, everything I drink into my body, mind and soul, and really welcome it on all levels, the spiritual as well as the physical. And even more, if I'm going to use something as an herbal medicine, for example, I really do that with respect and honor towards that. The difference here is that when I live ceremoniously, I thank it. So if I welcome my water, I greet my water, I welcome it into my body, then when I'm done, I'm like, thank you. This really helped my thirst. Thank you. I can feel the water, going into my body and settling, and it's so wonderful. Thank you. So the thank you is a part of living ceremoniously. And the thank you is also a letting go. So it's like, I welcome you, I thank you, you're on your way. But with generational curses like this, at some point in time, someone welcomed a spirit into their lives to help them overcome something, or as a crutch, or as a medicine, right? But they never thanked it and let it go. Maybe they thanked it. I don't know. Maybe I have an ancestor back in the day that, you know, drank a lot and then thanked it every time and was so grateful, but then, you know, picked it up the next day because it was such a wonderful thing. I know I have ancestors that have been relying on the bottle, so I can really see that happening. But what they didn't do was quit, you know, in a way that helped them heal. I talked a lot about this in my first video, the perspective that, the shamanic perspective that when we want to treat something, we treat it by finding the cause, finding the root, and then healing wherever it came from. So, a generational curse in this video, where we are at in this series, is when somewhere along the line of our ancestry, someone chose to invite something that had one aspect that they wanted to welcome, and they needed that at the time, but it came with so many other things that really hindered them and hindered their offspring. So I said that, well, maybe it was a good thing for all of them, and maybe they managed it well, and maybe their spouse also did it, and the children learned that this is a good crutch, you know. That can affect children in one way. And then if both parents are heavily relying on the bottle and the children have to grow up early, they have to be independent, they have to nurture and take care of the parents, become people pleasers, but no one tend to their needs, so they become independent and see it as they are the rocks and they don't need anything, they don't need anyone, but they can take care of everyone. That can affect them in a completely other way. And it might also make it so that they never drink, never pick up a bottle. And then if they have if someone has one parent that is a heavy drinker and another parent that isn't, that maybe that parent is really complaining a lot, and there's a bad dynamic in the family because of this crutch, then that can also affect the children. And knowing that it's inherited and that it's viewed upon as an illness can be both good and bad, and that view of it, that, well, my dad drank, so I'm a drunk, you know, that can help people feel like there's no way out, you can't heal from it. And someone else might think, well, because I have this in my family, I can never pick up a drink. And I'm not saying drink if you have an alcoholic parent. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm trying to give you a perspective on it, and just shine a light on how this can affect different people in a family. So one of the children, maybe early on, doesn't even take it with them. They're like, okay, so maybe they were like, okay, I understand that my mom or dad had this really bad thing happen to them, and they needed the crutch, but I don't need the crutch, so and I don't respect it, this is horrible. Maybe even they become a bit prejudiced against it, and that's not good either. You need to work on that if you are. But maybe that's what happens, and they're like, well, I don't need, so I'm never gonna drink. And then they teach their children that drinking is bad, and that we have alcoholism in the family, so drinking is bad, right? And their children are affected in one way. They see, maybe they are cycle breakers, but they have other things that they need to work on. And then their sibling might feel like they are so much like that parent, and they really feel with them, and they really, you know, they really carry the torch for that spirit, for that thing that comes with them. So it becomes a curse. So different curses can be different addictions, for example, but there are also other things that can be curses. So if you have questions about this so far, I'm holding a live Q&A on my Patreon at the end of October. You have to be a member, but you don't have to be a paying member to join that live and to ask questions, and I will answer to the best of my ability. So breaking these curses that comes from the family tree, it's both about being a cycle breaker, but it's also about letting go and thanking. Remember how I said that somewhere along the line they have invited these spirits into their lives and their medicine, but no one ever thanked them. So we break this cycle by not just seeing it for what it is and doing the opposite, because that's often how people view cycle breaking. Well, I'm not going to be like my parents, I'm going to do this. But to really heal it for yourself and coming generations, you need to see it for what it was and respect the decision that the person made. And you need to understand where they came from. And you need to love yourself, and you need to bring love into the healing. So one example of this, so this is October, right? In October I celebrate Hills Eve, some other people celebrate Samhain, and it has a lot of names. What we have in common is that we celebrate our ancestors, and we often celebrate with them and invite them into our sacred space in our circles. So you can do this, and you can take the opportunity to heal ancestral curses or generational curses in that circle. So when you invite all of your ancestors, you can bring one of these subjects into the circle, and you can, the more you know about it, the better. If you have someone in the family that is really into like ancestry and that sort of thing, to really look things up, you can maybe you can ask them for help in finding out who was the first one to really have this problem, where did it come from? Or maybe you know of an ancestor that had a problem or had something happen to them, and you want to know more about that. So you do as much research as you can, but if you don't know research, you can still let go of the spirit of it if you feel like it, if you know that something is present in your ancestral line. So you can invite all of your ancestors into your circle and then express your gratitude that they had this to help them live on, so that you are alive today. Because the only reason that you are alive today is because that ancestor made a decision to use the crutch instead of not being here, So somewhere along the line there is gratitude to be held, and then you have to understand and really express that understanding. Like, I understand why this was an option. Maybe you understand why it was the only option, and look at the times that they were in and understand that they didn't have the resources for healing that you have, and they didn't have whatever their circumstances looked like. Understand that. So you bring in gratitude for the choices they made, you bring in understanding, and then you bring in love. And you say, thank you, and I love you for what you did. I'm so grateful, I love you for what you did. And not just the ancestor, but the spirit. So you don't connect with it. Don't connect with it like bringing it into your body, mind, and soul. But see that it's already there, and address it. Like, I see you for what you are. I understand that this spirit is present in our ancestral lines. We thank you for what you have done. We thank you for your medicine. And we are grateful for this, but we no longer need you. So thank you for all you've done, and bye-bye. So when we go into other types of ceremonies where we work with spirits, like plant spirits, maybe you've been to a cacao ceremony. If you haven't, it's okay. But like in a cacao ceremony, no matter why you have brought in the cacao, you greeted the cacao in the beginning. You welcome it, and you greet the spirit of cacao and the goddess of cacao. And then when the ceremony is over, you thank it for being there. And then most often you can also pour a little bit out as an offering and a thank you to the Earth Mother and to the spirit itself. And that's the end of that connection, So in a ceremony where you want to thank and get rid of an evil spirit or a curse like this, because I'm gonna go into that later. So in a ceremony where you want to get rid of an evil spirit or a curse like this, you can bring in something that symbolizes it. So if it was alcohol, that's the easiest way for me to talk about this. So if it was alcohol, maybe in the middle of the circle you keep a glass of wine or booze or even moonshine or whatever it is during the entire ceremony. And then when you finish it, symbolically, when you thank the spirit of it, you give it back to the earth. So no one in the circle, you can do it alone or you can do it with family members, the more the merrier. You can do it alone, you can do it with family members, it's your choice. But no one drink it, but you pour it out at the end of the ceremony and you thank it. You give it back to the earth, to the cosmos, and you give that spirit back and you thank it. And that is a great step in ancestral healing. Yeah, so before I end this video, I want to talk a little bit about what I mean by curse, like generational curse. So for me, a curse in this context is this heavy energy and this spirit that has latched itself upon a generation, for example. And it becomes heavier and heavier with each generation until it has its own life. It becomes its own entity of a sort. We can also call this demon. And demon is often a way to describe these things, that everyone struggles with their own inner demons. And that is a great way to view it, actually. But it's not a demon in a sense that it's something that you can't really fight. Is a demon in the sense that it is a spirit that you have welcomed, that someone has welcomed in, and then it has lingered, and it's a struggle back and forth, and then it feels heavy and it's always present, and it can be like the devil on the shoulder saying, oh, just a drop, it's okay, it's fine, and that sort of thing. So I did say in the first video that I was going to touch upon the subject of demons, and this is where I do it, just this short. If you want to know more, you go ask a question on the Q&A live on Patreon later in October. So it's a curse in the sense that it feels like you can't get rid of it, and you feel like it's from the outside, and it is something that's come from the outside, because I don't believe that we really have like a gene that we can't get rid of that is connected to maybe alcoholism or addiction or something like that. I believe that everything has been gathered into the ancestral line and that we can get rid of it. Just as we can break cycles and be a cycle breaker, and just as we can bring something in and change the course of our entire ancestral line, we can also thank it and break the cycle and help future generations by healing it. So I want to end this video with a little bit of recap. So for generational trauma, it can either be that an entire generation went through something that changed the course of everyone's thinking and everyone's life, and maybe even their metabolism or their basic functions, something like that. It can also be one person that had one trauma and that affected their mentality and their physicality for the coming generations. If we can heal this by being the cycle breaker and understanding that this is what happened to people before us, we are not in the same circumstance anymore, we can change our mindset towards this thing, like scarcity, for example. And then when it comes to generational curses, that is when maybe even the same person that had something completely changed their life turn to something from the outside and bring something else in. It can be a lot of things. It can be a drug, it can be alcohol, it can be the feeling of maybe that person became disabled and couldn't take care of themselves, and they always needed someone else to do things for them, and that mindset is brought to to the next generation, but maybe also the spirit of the medicine that they needed to continue on is brought in, so that the strength doesn't come from within them anymore. It has to come from the outside, and making everyone always feel like they have to look on the outside and maybe something specific, because that something specific helps that person in that time. So when it comes to generational curses, it's a matter of having something from the outside, welcoming it in, and then have it still latch on, and not getting rid of it or letting it go before the next generation, so that coming generations have this with them, because it's something that has attached itself to the family line. From this lens, we can even view the usage of guns. I live in a country where we don't have guns. People don't normally have guns. You can get a license, but it's illegal to carry a gun. We don't have guns. There are other countries where it's legal, it's possible, it's easy to get, and people feel safer with a gun, even though they aren't safe with a gun. If we look at it from this lens, then that is a generational curse. An entire generation decided that it's okay to bear arms. We need to bear arms. We need to be able to protect ourselves. It's so funny, because you know what I'm talking about. I talk about people that came to one country, took over that country, stole land from the people already there, and then having to use this outer resource to manage their land and to protect their land. So they felt like they can't put this down, they can't put the guns down, because they're afraid of what will happen. And so from the beginning, it was to protect land that they had stolen. And I can already now picture all of the healing that needs to be done. So, and nowadays, they don't need guns to do this. But the curse is still there. The curse is still there. So we can view it from that lens as well. And this is something that I didn't mention in the Swedish video. I just felt called to bring it up here. So, generational trauma, generational curses. And we can heal the generational curses with thanking the spirit of the curse, of the entity of the demon, and giving it back to the universe. What we have to keep in mind is that whether we are working on or talking about generational trauma or generational curses, there's going to be a lot of shame and guilt in this, because there's a lot of prejudice that follow both of these. So no matter what you are, no matter what is affecting you in this life, and no matter where it comes from, there's a lot of the times there's a lot of guilt and shame connected to that. So we need to work on guilt and shame in order to heal, and that's something that we really need to do. And one of the things we can do is to change the mindset from judgment to gratitude. So for instance, I talked about changing the view on maybe the choice of alcohol as a crutch for someone in the past, to see that, okay, this person really needed that crutch, it's because of that crutch that I am here today. And giving thanks to that was available at the time where nothing else was. So instead of judging the person for choosing alcohol, we can understand that they need it, we can give thanks for the presence of it at the time, and then we can, with love, we can let it go. So that is a way to work with the shame, to change the view on it from judgment to love, from judgment to gratitude. So shame and guilt are very central in both generational stuff, but also an ancestral healing and past life regression therapy and healing that I'm going to talk about in my next video. So, to answer the question, can we heal this? Yes, we can. And I don't preach just one method of doing it. There's a lot of ancestral healing out there, and whatever feels right for you, that's what you should do. There's so many different kinds of ancestral healing. so many different paths you can take and so many traditions you can follow. So there's nothing that is right or wrong. It's all about what is right for you in this moment and for you going forward. So until next time, walk in beauty. Take care of yourself. Xingling.